Hello, everybody. This is Dane with the Genzio team here at the Media House, day 3. I'm not usually on camera. I'm usually behind the camera. But there is a special guest I just wanted to jump right into a great conversation with. We have Vlad from ETH Chicago.
Dane, great to see you again, man. Happy to do your first big interview.
It is what it is. I mean,
yeah,
it was gonna happen at some point.
Hey, happy to break that.
So let's jump in.
Yeah.
East Chicago. What's going on with that?
Yeah, for sure. So ETH Chicago was a community that started around June of last year. Started by a couple of guys, both named Andrew. I won't go too much into that history, but they basically wanted to do a big Ethereum-based conference in the Midwest. There was a huge gap in like crypto, like a unifying crypto community in the Midwest. So I think they wanted to, create that space for people to have that conference. And so I immediately was like, my eyes lit up because I live in Chicago and I've been looking for that sort of thought leadership in the city. So I got involved. I helped a lot on the infrastructure side, helped with a lot of the back end stuff, sourcing speakers and making sure everything was set for attendees. And then after that conference ran, we've now sort of pivoted to focusing on it being a sustainable community, more focused on like monthly events, written pieces. I run the newsletter for ETH Chicago now, and sort of like maintaining that core group of audience who's just going to be like enthused about the community and can just sort of propel us into hopefully another conference.
That's excellent. I've been thinking about this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We've traveled all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah.
As Genzio Media, obviously, you've
Yeah.
seen all our content. And I'm thinking, like, why haven't we been to Chicago yet?
It's a great question.
Why? Where is the disconnect in the city? I mean, obviously now you're trying to build it up, but
Yeah.
I mean, maybe talk about just that disconnect.
Yeah, I think Chicago has not traditionally been at the forefront of like tech innovation, or at least in people's minds. It's much more of like a hardware and manufacturing driven hub for investment. And so even the traditional, tech space, you don't see a lot of unicorns come out of Chicago. There's a company called Cameo, which you guys might be familiar with. That's a Chicago-based company. That's one of the few like tech unicorns. So I mean, crypto is like at the bleeding edge of that stuff. That's like, even if you go to San Francisco, there's a lot of people who have just no Web3 crypto expertise. They're just sort of very traditionally focused in tech. So I guess that would probably explain a lot to me. There's just Chicago's more risk averse to being at the bleeding edge of this sort of stuff. But there is a huge community of people who are doing that stuff, whether it's just individual, token stuff, or they're developers working remotely for companies like Coinbase. So again, they really needed like a unifying organization to say like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of us out here. Like, here's a hub for us. Hopefully this will drive a lot more talent and eyes towards Chicago, and it'll make Chicago actually look cool for crypto.
Awesome. So, I mean, if you're in Chicago,
Yeah.
and you're watching this and you're wondering like, maybe you don't necessarily want to travel, or you don't want to like leave the state or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your resource right here.
Yeah.
You're building the community in Chicago.
Yeah.
How's it? I mean, just in general, how have people been receiving it?
Really, really well. The newsletter's gotten a very positive response. The engagement's very high. Now the focus, part of the reason why I'm here this week is to try to raise awareness for the brand and get our subscribership up, so we can have it lead into other initiatives. We're definitely filling a hole. It was sorely needed. People had very good response to the conference last year. We definitely got a lot of good feedback in terms of what we could do better in the future. And there's a lot of like cutting edge projects that have, Chicago-based teams that we can highlight, that we can do events with. There's developers from EigenLayer. There's, like I said, there's people from Coinbase. And I'd love to just like get these people to come in and do talks about their companies, introduce people to these concepts. I mean, You know, you pull a normie off the streets and you immediately start talking about like restaking. They're like, what do I do with Ethereum? You know, oh, I last thing I bought was like a Dogecoin. So to like try to like go down that technical rabbit hole is a lot. And I think that is not just like a Chicago problem. It's a crypto problem as a whole, is to like remind people who are in this space that we have to sort of like pull things back to the basics. With every crypto bull and bear cycle, we're onboarding new masses of people. And so you have to sort of step back and not just assume people will know what DeFi is, what NFTs are. You just kind of have to be like, hey, you got to get this thing called a wallet. You got to stuff it with crypto. You got to like pay gas fees. You know, you just got to go back to the basics. And I think our efforts should be focused a lot on that this year.
Interesting. I mean, I wonder, like, I feel like there's definitely people building in Chicago.
Definitely.
Are there any projects that you guys interact with that are part of this new community you're building that you feel deserves more exposure?
Well, my company does.
Well, sure. Of course. Let's start with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Vlad's company.
Yeah. So my NFT platform called Venity, we started building it in 2021. We've been around for 2.5 years. It's basically the simplest way to create NFT loyalty campaigns. We cover all the mint fees. We abstract away all the onboarding complexities of getting people to do crypto things. We do embedded wallets, and we cover all gas fees. So for the most part, we don't even want people to know that they're doing crypto stuff. We just want them to be doing fun stuff on chain.
Best way to do it.
For sure. So obviously, I'm always, our doors are open for collaboration on Venity. But yeah, there's a ton of cool stuff in Chicago. There's one of our other core team members, James. He is a Ethereum core developer. He also works at a company called Arbitrum, which is a layer 2. Yeah, it's a huge company in the space. So obviously they have a foothold in Chicago. You guys spoke with Erin earlier. She's got some ties to Chicago and the stuff she's doing in DeSci. She's trying to create more of a DeSci hub in Chicago. I want to call out one of my favorite teams, investment firms in Chicago named Cosimo Capital. Jack and Luke run a very interesting shop that's now focused on a protocol called BitTensor, which is sort of at the cross section of AI and crypto. That's going to be a huge narrative in this bull cycle. BitTensor, I think, is doing very interesting stuff, creating like an token-driven marketplace for AI models. And so I think the work they're doing is phenomenal, and I'm working my butt off to get them more people into there, get them more developer talent, get them investors, get them all the resources they need so they can grow their company.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess the last time we interviewed you was at Consensus last year, 2023. Forgetting what year it is already. I guess, and you guys were just a startup at that point. I guess. Yeah. Well, you still are, or would you say you've kind of?
In terms of product, we've definitely matured past the startup phase. This is not like an MVP thing. The product is very fully baked and it's ready for people to adopt. We are actually part of an accelerator program right now at a hub called 1871, which also has signed a partnership with ETH Chicago. They've created their first Web3 lab, and they are looking to us for some leadership, to source speakers and subjects, help them run their events. And so my company, Venity, is also part of their accelerator program. The way the platform is really positioned is for B2B. So I really want to create partnerships with traditional Web2 brands who are crypto curious and just curious about, creating new engagement initiatives for their customers. So we're looking at, solidifying more of those partnerships through like the 1871 accelerator program.
What do you, let me get my words out.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is my first time. I think I'm doing
You're doing great, man.
I guess what is talking about connecting Web 2 to Web 3, I guess, what is one of the better ways you found to have that conversation?
Well, the easiest way is to get people in through these speculative bull cycles. When people see number go up, they're going to create wallets at some point. They're going to buy tokens. It's just the reality. And sometimes that works out great, sometimes not so great. You got people who probably bought in at the top of the last cycle, in $4,000 Ethereum, who were like, well, I guess that money's gone. But, you know, 2.5 years later, they're probably waking up and being like, oh, I'm actually maybe just a little bit down or maybe even up now. So, you know, they'll come back around, and then a whole new wave of people come back around. So, you know, it's like crypto's at the cross section of finance and culture. So you got to embrace that. You know, sure, there's going to be some scammy behavior that comes out of that. But, you know, as the bankless guys would say, we're on the frontier, right? Yeah. So that's obviously, I think, like the number one thing that drives people into the space. But I think increasingly so, as the actual technology scales and supports more users, we'll see a lot more cool use cases where it's kind of obvious why you want to use these tools and infrastructure. There's a great project on Coinbase's Layer 2 blockchain base called Basepaint, which is basically like a collaborative pixel art platform. Every day they have like a canvas with a theme, and pixel artists come in and contribute 100 pixels. You have to mint this brush, and that gives you 100 pixels on the canvas. And this all happens on chain. And at the end of the day, that canvas switches to a mintable NFT. And so everybody who wants to buy that artwork that was collaboratively created can do that. And the mint fees from that artwork go directly to the artist that contributed to it. So your 100 pixels are a contribution to that piece of art. And so you get a cut of the sales from that piece of art. It's all done using smart contracts. It's all done on chain. It's a brilliant use and a brilliant use case for smart contracts and blockchain. And I love that. And I want to see more of that, you know, in these next couple of years. I think that'll be a great way to onboard people. Yeah. And then our approach, you know, with Venity is always to just basically hide all that shit in the background and eventually just sort of show customers or, you know, our clients in the B2B space that like, hey, we created these amazing new profiles of your clients because we can see what NFTs they have in their wallets. Now you can use this data to sort of drive your business decisions going forward. That's more of a long-term thing. You know, we got to do a lot more on chain to create that value, but you know, that's my B2B approach to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I see a lot of that's where I'd like to see the industry go towards more, is just like, it's like, sure, there's all this great technical stuff, whatever, going on.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm a filmmaker. I'm just running the cameras.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this stuff.
Right.
I've got so much exposure to all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I jump on someone's project. I'm just like looking at it. And I'm like, okay, I got to do this and I got to do this. And I can connect a wallet and then I got to do this. And connecting the wallet, that's easy compared to some of these projects I've seen.
Yeah.
Geez, like what? Couldn't we just hide all of this and just make it like?
Yeah.
I mean, it would just make life so much easier for, and sure, there's challenges with doing this, obviously.
Sure.
But just, so I'm kind of rambling.
No.
I never get my thoughts about the industry as a whole out, but please, people, I know we got a big audience. Please, if we want more adoption across the board, it's got to be seamless. It's got to be. I don't even know what Web3 is. What is this? It's just an app that I do this and this and this, and then it just works. Yeah. It's like, forget all the lingo.
I think, yeah. And there is like an eagerness on the part of like app developers to do that, to create like experiences. The reality is that like, you know, I think like the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, had mentioned that like crypto is transitioning from like the dial-up era to like the broadband era, because it's like slow, it's costly, it's inefficient. And so like it has to go through that phase before all this stuff is like super easy to use and create on. But we're getting closer. I think with every like these like bull bear cycles, we get closer. And I think by like late 2020s, I think it'll be competitive with, you know, your Facebooks of the world in terms of how easy it is for people to access it and onboard into it. Yeah, we're still sort of at the power user enthusiast phase. But it'll change.
I mean, is there anything else you want to add? My throat's kind of drying up. This Denver air, you know, this Denver air is crazy.
Yeah,
but
no, this is
yeah.
great,
Anything else you want to add? Let's plug some socials. I mean, obviously we'll put it in here, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I love personally, I'd love for you guys to follow me on Twitter, VAVESALON. I'm old school normie. It's my just first initial last name.
Awesome.
And then I'm on Farcaster now. It's my ENS handle is kingyam.eth. So if you want to follow my on-chain activity, do that. Please don't rob me. Don't come after my wallet. I have a bunch of valuable NFTs on there. Maybe I should move them to a different wallet now.
I mean, we could cut that out.
That's fine. Actually, no. I'm totally public with it. That's totally fine. Yeah, and then follow Venity Official on Instagram, Twitter, and then 0x ETH Chicago on Twitter. ETHChicago.xyz is our website. Please subscribe to the newsletter.
Sure. And when is the next big ETH Chicago event?
So we're going to do a series of monthly events at 1871 Net Space. The next big one's going to be March 20th. It's going to be focused on BitTensor and decentralized science. And it's going to be at the cross-section of those two things. We'll do some every month. And then we have a big newsletter interview coming up with James from Arbitrum, focused on the upcoming Ethereum Denkun upgrade, which will unlock a lot of cool stuff for the Ethereum ecosystem.
Excellent. Vlad, it was a pleasure having you.
Thanks,
My
man.
first interview, people. All right.
Killed it.
Thank you.